Hey guys, L here, Revitalized Seed. Happy Thursday. So the video today, I thought I'd talk about soil compaction. This came up earlier this week when I was talking to a customer and friend, and I wanted to go over it. So it's something that we see often. I want to start off by saying that there's two types of soil compaction. Primarily today, I'm going to be focused on surface soil compaction. There also is going to be subsoil compaction, which is where you'll hear a lot of times in agriculture where they're going to be using a ripper or a deep shank ripper where it actually doesn't have any or minimal disturbance across the top of the soil, but it's actually breaking up that subsoil compaction. You can Google, rippers to break up subsoil and kind of see how the soil will literally roll as they go through. It needs a lot of horsepower, and it's something that's used in modern agriculture, but not something that would be used in most food plot and or gardening settings. So that's going to be kind of or orchards or something like that. So that's going to be kind of my main focus, is going to be on surface compaction. So what is surface compaction? Well, surface compaction is going to be when the surface of your soil gets compacted due to tractor traffic, ATV traffic, foot traffic in a garden or an orchard. This can also be impacted by improper soil, or it can be heavily more prominent when you have improper soil structures. So we talk about base saturations and things. If your magnesium's too high, if you don't have enough calcium, those type of things can lead to a higher likelihood of soil compaction. Also, why good soil practices are important, keeping a living root. The other one that people don't think about is actually rainfall. Rainfall hits the ground very, very hard. So when you have bare soil and it's hitting the ground very hard, you will get surface compaction. Here's an example of what that can look like. So I am sure when this farmer went through and planted his corn, this field probably looked really good. Most likely what happened here is he got a hard rain and then no rain for quite some time, and it creates a crust on the top of the surface. Now with modern farm machinery, even with this crust, if you have this, it's heavy enough and you have good cutting wheels and things like that, that you're able to put that seed right in the furrow at 2-inch depth with fertilizer in a 2x2, and assuming you get another rain relatively soon thereafter, you're going to be in a good situation. However, if you're in a gardening or food plot setting and you're trying to establish a food plot and you have virtually, like in this situation, no thatch and or very limited thatch, and you go broadcast seed onto this, even with a good rain, the likelihood that you're going to get something established is going to be very, very small, even if you increase seeding rates, etc., because that young seed has to now try to penetrate through that crusted over surface. It doesn't have coverage to keep the seed safe from predation, so birds, things like that. And secondly, it doesn't have coverage for that seed to even have kind of that moisture barrier, right? So when you lay down thatch and the seed's in there and it rains, it allows that soil to not get crusted over. But when you don't have that thatch, you end up with this. So going back to this image, you can kind of see what happens is as we receive a lot of heavy rainfall with no thatch to slow down the rainfall, and or are constantly running over our fields with a tractor and or ATV, or even foot traffic like in a garden. I've noticed in my own garden where my plant rows are. So my tomato rows are like this, and then I'll have a walking row, and then a tomato row like this, and then a walking row. Well, obviously my son and I were always picking the tomatoes all summer long, and we're going up and down those walking rows. Now we did a weed matting this past year, and on those walking rows, we also had weed matting down. One of the things that I found was I should have had a living root walking path, maybe a clover or something like that, and then I continued to walk on, keep that living root up, because what happened is when I seeded my cover crop, it all came up, but you can very distinctly see where the tomatoes were. The cover crop did much, much better than where the walking rows are. So what will I do is I'll actually switch that this year. I'll put the tomatoes in where the walking rows are and switch it. And then I'll also likely on where the walking rows were, try to keep a living root growing there versus just putting weed mat down on everything. But what you can see in this image, as I kind of a side note there, but hopefully that was useful, is as we drive over and or allow rainfall to slam down on the soils, you get this, basically it's forcing all of your air out. So it's just, as the word says, it's compacting it. It's making it like a brick. So going back to this image, you can imagine now how this gets exponentially more difficult, because whether you have seeds established or you're trying to get seeds established, like in the example I gave earlier, you broadcasted onto this and you're praying for rain because you want to do a no-till process, and now you get a good hard rain. Not only is it going to be hard for those young seedlings to penetrate this when they send out that first root, you're also going to be at a much higher risk for additional runoff of anything that's there, because basically that is like a driveway at this point. It's very hard, and regardless of chemical structure of the soil, your calcium and magnesium things could be perfect from a soil sampling perspective, but because topsoil compaction has occurred, you're setting yourself up for failure as far as getting something established there. So another thing to keep in mind. So how would I suggest kind of working through this? Well, number one, obviously we want to take a good sound soil sample. We want to focus on pH, we want to focus on base saturations, and we want to focus on 6 soil health principles, keeping a living root going, having the soil covered, etc. That's going to help us tremendously from a compaction perspective. But let's say we're starting from ground one or start one, and we have soil compaction already there on the surface. I'm not talking subsoil compaction at this time. Maybe that's another video for another day. So just on the surface compaction, we've tried the no-till process. It's not working. What would I recommend? Well, the gentleman who runs the Regenerative Agriculture podcast does a really nice job. And I remember one time he said, I don't think there's any better prescription for compaction other than a one-time use of steel. So that would be my recommendation, would be to use some light tillage. I still would recommend light tillage, unless, again, we're not talking about a ripper or something like that. I just want to break up that compaction. I would do it in a time when it's most likely to have success. So I have rain in the forecast. I would increase my seeding rate to help outcompete the weeds that are getting started. If I am going to be using light tillage, I would be making sure that I am using any and all amendments that make sense to get established. So I'd be coating my seeds with a mycorrhizal fungi inoculant. I'd be using things like our product Seed Feed. If there was any micronutrients, our Vitalized Micros, or another option of your choice, and of course lime. I'd be putting those down. I'd be doing the light tillage to work those right into that root zone. I'd be seeding a little bit heavier. I'd be packing it down. And then of course, if there's any additional options, if you have the option of spreading a manure or something over that to give you seed or coverage over top of that, I'd be doing that at that time as well. If you can't, but you know that there's going to be some nice calm rains in the future, I'd be planting that and trying to get that established. Once you get that really good established one time, you get that good root boost going, you can foliar feed those plants. So you have really strong, healthy plants. You're kind of spoon feeding them that first year or two. Now you have a good, strong root system that's going to be breaking up any subsoil compaction, especially like with our carbon load. If you have good tuber production plants, you're breaking up all of that compaction, and now in the next spring, you're going to have these tall rye and triticale and all these other species in which you can seed into, roll them over, mow them off, etc. So now you have a thatch, and now you're not just throwing your seed onto a bare soil, and you're going to be able to set yourself up for much better opportunity for reducing tillage or going full no-till in the future. So if you don't have a no-till drill and you're dealing with some subsoil compaction, you're wondering, how can I get started? Those are some things to keep in mind. Everything starts with a soil test. If you guys like this, please share, subscribe. Hopefully this is helpful. And check us out at vitalizeseed.com.